on.
Elaine Ellinger, what a delight and a pleasure to have a transatlantic conversation with you for the second time. We're doing it every month now, and that's great, Elaine, my good friend over in Canada. Now, yes, we talked last time. I'm going to use the word expert. It's a bit cliched, I know the word expert, but you really do know your stuff when it comes to Islam and the Quran, and particularly what Islam and the Quran actually means and the implications of it in real life terms for the West, for Europe, for the US, for Canada, now in this time we're in. And on this particular show, obviously, we're going to mention your wonderful book, which I've read. You sent me a free copy, which was very touching, which is Reclaiming the Future. It's a civilizational reckoning, reclaiming the future, and
Understanding the threat and reclaiming the future.
understanding the threat and
That's a
reclaiming the
big
future.
one.
Yeah, got it. And I really enjoyed reading that. Very readable, fairly large print, and very to the point. Yeah, truly academic work, but something that the layman, so to speak, can really understand. And it's shocking stuff that so many people are sort of asleep to, aren't they still, or semi-awake, semi-asleep to, Elaine. And yeah, um, we're going to talk about that again, and the, the 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 breathtaking things that I learnt from it, the things that really shocked me, because I've been sugarcoating things for a while, and I read this book and I thought, no, this is this is more than shocking, and people need to know about this. And it's not having a go at Muslims themselves or individual Muslims,
Oh, no, no.
as we've said.
A lot of
We've
Muslims are very poorly informed about Islam, and
Yeah,
sometimes they're required to memorize stuff they don't even really understand what it is.
yeah,
So
and we've said you've met so many over the years since your journey started in 1983 when you met an Iranian refugee in Canada. You've met so many Muslims that have suffered terribly um, under Islam.
well, he was Baha'i, but
Yeah,
I was speaking with a Kurdish man just last week. It pretty much everybody suffers. You know, the funny thing about Islam is that it's very suited to an authoritarian personality, and those are not rare. And my my studies at university were majority psychology, and I don't call myself a professional in any sense of the word, but it's a well-known phenomena, the authoritarian personality. It's not limited to Islam at all. There's something called the F scale, where they measure this, and it's very common. In fact, 20 even 30% of the population. And there are certain occupations that you want an authoritarian personality, and imam would be one of them. Okay, they show deference to authority, to Allah, but they absolutely love to enforce rules and regulations. So you have the morality police in Iran, and that was going to be our subject today, I believe, is
yeah,
talking about Iran, and why does that matter? Well, people think, well, it's over there. It doesn't matter to us. Well, it certainly does. I mean, and it's certainly not just because there are so many, Iranian origin people living in the country who've, fled for their life, but it's the Sharia, the basis of law in Iran. And the mistake people make is they look at everything through a Western lens, and like the UK is a constitutional monarchy, all right, and religion plays a role. It's a legacy, all right, but in Iran, what you have is a religious system that has political authority. It has state
Yeah.
control,
Yeah. Yeah.
but primarily it is a religious system with state control. Whereas we have, states state control, but religion is not the primary function at all.
Yeah.
And so the point being that we not only have people who are perfectly suited to be morality police, we have Sharia. And I have, so many people. I was listening to somebody in Florida not long ago saying, well, we don't have Sharia in Florida. Well, if you have Islam, then you have Sharia. That's all there is to it. It's a
Yeah.
question of degree. How much Sharia do you have? So that is why, of course, what's happening in Iran is extremely important to all Western countries because Sharia does not recognize borders at all. And it's here already,
Yeah.
very much so. Yes.
Not only does it not recognize borders, but it doesn't recognize any sort of modernization or progress or moving with the times.
Yeah, and it's the foundation of Iran's legal system. And just yesterday I was looking up something on Google, and it said that, oh, I know, I was looking for the Cairo Declaration. I wanted the exact wording, which actually I'll give to you in a minute, because the fourth article here, I'll read it for you. The fourth article of the Iranian Constitution says that all civil, penal, financial, economic, administrative, cultural, military, political, and other laws must be based on Islamic criteria. So you need to understand that all of that is encompassed in Sharia. This is not private belief. This is not, personal spirituality. It is governance. That is what a
Yeah.
Sharia is. So it's
Yeah.
all civil, penal, financial,
Yeah.
economic, administrative, cultural, military, political, and other laws. All of it is encompassed in Sharia. Now,
Islam has severe issues with
it
control,
covers everything, and people
control
want
and
to treat it.
authoritarianism.
Yeah, and they want to treat it just like another religion and give
Yeah.
it the same privileges as other religions. But then it takes over governance as well. And they just don't want to think about that. But the reason I was looking up the Cairo Declaration is because that it says something very similar. It says the original in 1990 said that everything was subservient to Sharia. Okay, Sharia ruled everything. Okay, but they changed the wording owing to pressure from the West. When the pressure from the West is no
Yeah.
longer relevant, we're just going to get straight up Sharia. But at the time, there had been pressure from the EU about the Cairo Declaration. And so they reworded it and published it again in 2020. So when I went looking for it to get the specific wording, which says, in accordance with Islamic values and principles, right? And it also says that it follows the Charter of Medina. And the Charter of Medina, well, that's another conversation. The Charter of Medina and the last sermon of Muhammad, which are Sharia. Okay, so when you go to look it up, you'll see Google AI will tell you that the Cairo Declaration has been dramatically changed to be more in line with European definitions of human rights. And all they've done is change the wording because
Yeah.
Islamic principles are Sharia. What do they think they are? You take the
Yeah.
word Sharia out and it's not Sharia anymore. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
foolish we are.
Yeah. And it frustrates the hell out of you, doesn't it, Elaine, to hear people talking about moderate Muslims, moderate Islam, modernization of Islam, people that want to modernize it and want to be progressive. It frustrates the hell out of you because to you that is just not
Well, it's
that's not real.
nonsense. Well,
It's
it's
not going to happen.
nonsense. Yeah.
It's not real.
You, yeah,
And even if those people exist, which we know they do, it's not going to have any major impact. They're not really going to get anywhere.
they want to conflate the two. And if you go, oh, you're attacking Muslims, which I never do, if they can make it sound like that, what they're actually doing is protecting the doctrine. So nobody will talk about the doctrine. But the doctrine is terribly hard on Muslims. I don't feel bad at all about critiquing doctrine that, as far as it is concerned, slavery is halal, beating women is halal. This is all lawful to marry 6-year-olds. This is all lawful. So I don't feel at all bad about critiquing Islam. More people should. The Muslims didn't write it. They are the ones who are exposed to practice it. And that includes the people suffering in Iran right now, which is what we're, primarily going to talk about. But one of the things about Iran is that even though it is 100% under Sharia law, that is not what people expected when there was a revolution in 1979. There were a lot of people involved in that revolution. There were Marxists, there were liberals, there were gay people, there were all sorts of people looking for a change. And they did not expect that they were going to find themselves ultimately under the top dog, which always reminds me of a fight I saw when I was a little girl, because I had so many brothers. Fights were on a regular basis on the telly.
Yeah, you had a lot of siblings, didn't you?
Oh, goodness. Well, I had 5 natural brothers, and then I had 40 foster brothers and sisters. So, we always had a house full. But I was going through the living room, and they were watching this boxing match, and there were 12 men in the ring. 12. And it was like, who is going to be the last man standing? Well, one fellow weighed almost 600 pounds. His name was Haystack Calhoun. All 11 got together to throw out Haystack Calhoun. Okay, because they knew that independently they couldn't do that. And, they had to work together. And that's basically what happened in 1979. There was a revolution. There were a lot of complaints, but they did not expect that Haystack Calhoun, Islam, would be the last man standing. But that's exactly what happened, right? And so in Iran, I'm just going to list them off. There are Persians. Now, that's the majority of the population, okay? But there's also the Azeris, there's the Kurds, there's Balochs, there's Arabs who are not in a good position in Islam or in Iran because, some of them are Sunnis, and even the ones that aren't, there's the threat that there's that closeness to, the Arab country, which is Sunni. So they don't do well. There's Turkmen. Then there's indigenous people. There's Lurs, Galaks, Mazardaris. Like I'm not exactly sure how that word goes, but those are indigenous people. There's Armenians, there's Assyrians, there's Zoroastrians, Jews, and Baha'i. Now, these people all have different, people want to say, oh, well, the hijab is culture. No, I'm sorry. That is not the culture of these people. Culture evolves naturally, and Islam does not evolve. It is a system of governance. It is laws. So what had happened was back around, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, all right, we had Ataturk in Turkey. And in Iran, you had Pahlavi. And both of these in the 1920s were trying to modernize their countries to become more secular. And that was going very well. And the thing is that this actually parallels my own life, because when I was a young woman, the women in Iran were virtually indistinguishable from the women in the West. They looked like me. They were doing the same thing as me. They're running around in 2-piece bathing suits, and they're wearing stockings. They have their hair bouffant. They're off doing all sorts of things and having a wonderful time. So, that is what happened with the modernization, is that it was very much in line with what was happening in the West. But then in 1979, there was a revolution. And the thing is that with Islam, it says that there are a group who will fight for the truth being, the Quran and Hadith, the foundational texts, that there is a group that will fight for this to the end of time. And they can be extremely brutal. And what happened in 1979 is there were a lot of people who were upset, but then Islam dominated. And, a friend of mine was working there at the time. He's written a book called Revolution. And he was working on the nuclear plant that was being built there, and it was abandoned. And it was incredible. They had people, they never knew who was going to show up at the site next, demanding cars or whatever. Quite often they were armed. It was crazy. But ultimately it was the mullahs that took charge. And what happened is all the people who helped them, all right, the gays, the liberals, all of them, they all ended up just being collateral damage. Thousands and thousands of people were being killed. So I'm sorry, I've kind of hogged the conversation. If you want to jump
No,
in.
I mean, I think you did hint in our conversations over the last few weeks that most people have got no idea of the extent of what's going on in Iran at the moment.
No, not at all.
Um,
Or who they are, even who they are.
yeah, and of course the internet is problematic in Iran at the moment. And we know most people know there's a huge revolution going on. The big question is what will replace it. So it's good news, but it's also very, very savage and very bloody. And the other question, what will replace it? Um, but it's hard to know because we've lost contact with a lot of people there, haven't we? So it's hard to know exactly what's going on for many people there.
Well, people don't really know what's been going on all this time. What it's
No,
like for people living there. Now, the fellow I met in 1983 was Baha'i, and he and his friends had been tortured, terribly abused, and that's not uncommon at all. And some of them killed. All right, so that was terrible. But what's the ongoing situation? Well, what is enforced under Sharia? I've given you a list there, but how does that actually play out in everyday life? All right. So the hijab is mandatory, and they have the morality police. And the morality police would be like the mullahs, the authoritarian types that we're talking about. They just love enforcing those rules, and they show deference to authority. So, they're perfect for, the IRGC. That's just the kind that they're looking for. So we have the mandatory hijab. And I mean, people have died for taking it off. We have
yeah,
segregation of the sexes, all right, in all public life. So even buses, all right, schools, public eating, all of this, universities, stadiums, there's segregation. There's Ramadan fasting, and that's the entire population. Now, in Pakistan, a year or so ago, there was a Hindu man who had his restaurant open for Hindu people during Ramadan. He was killed by mob violence. All right. So they have Ramadan fasting that affects the entire population. And we're seeing that here now. People not wanting to offend people because, it might be a hospital. Oh, well, there, or even a classroom. There was a German classroom where there were 3 Muslim students in the classroom, and the teacher made the whole class not drink water or eat that day to support. Well, this is ridiculous. This is, but anyway, so there's compulsory religious education. All students have to take it. There's no criticism of Islam or Sharia allowed. There's Friday closures. There's,
yeah,
like I said, the morality police, but there's also the Ministry of Culture and Islamic Guidance. And this is in regards to like music, just singing, like you think about the freedom we have here and how we do not appreciate, the sun on our face, the wind in our hair, the ability to sing, to dance. All of this disappears.
yeah,
So dancing is illegal. There's, like there was a couple not long ago, they filmed themselves, a man and a woman dancing in public, and they were prisoned for years, all right, for
yeah,
this. There's censorship and surveillance, the internet speech, death to apostates. The execution rate is the second highest in the world, next to China.
And you've got Iranian contacts
I do.
in both in Canada and in Iran.
The one in Iran I've lost touch with, and
Yeah,
I connected with him last April and wanted he wanted to read my book. And when my book was published, he was the very first person in the world to get a copy. I had made a note because I knew how much he suffered there, how much they all suffer there. And
Yeah,
I sent him an EPUB. And I need to be very careful not to identify anything about this person because, of the miracle that he might still be alive. But he told me what happened with the 1979 revolution so far as his family was concerned. First, there was mass hysteria. They have a lot of names for this. But there were basically, people were saying that they could see Khomeini's face in the moon, right?
yeah,
And it was a phenomena. There was no face in the moon, but there was absolute hysteria about it. And he said the communists, the Islamists, and that Islamists, the jihadis, there were so many different varieties. Okay, they started to fight with the regime because you had Sunnis in there too. They started to fight with the regime that was actually formed, and the IR and many of them were killed. Okay, so the IRGC besieged their house. His father was arrested and taken away in one of those buses. His aunts, his uncles, his grandfather were also arrested. They were
yeah,
visiting the family in jail every week. The people around us, around and his neighbors and that they were even afraid to speak to him. His father was tortured. His uncle was shot.
wow,
And the thing that people are hearing now about the bullets, okay, that they aren't given the body back because they want money, ransom for the bullets. This is not new. This happened to his uncle. The children never saw their father again. They would not give the body back. They wanted money for the bullets. Now, I lost contact with this person, as soon as this all began. This was, he told me this, months ago about what happened to his uncle. So this is nothing new, ransoming people's bodies for bullets. It's just,
yeah,
and so many people were tortured. So what finally happened, he did eventually get a good job. He's a professional, and he was involved in I won't say what, but for his political views on something, he lost his job. He was fired, and this is only last year. And it affected the family so badly. And I actually made a little note here about what he said. He said, I think nobody knows what happens under the Islamic rules. Their brain has been wired in a different way. When I was a child, I felt it in my bones. For my differing opinion about the hijab and barbarian rule of Islam, he was banned from his work. You can't imagine what happened under that. They're spying
yeah,
on me and they have been watching me. He says, I understand what is going on. It's about controlling society. Be patient. I'm sure the light is coming. And that was the last I heard from this person. And it's,
yeah. And it's interesting that in Tehran, I've read many times that in Tehran now, in the capital, there are nightclubs, there is drinking underground, there is even recreational drug use underground, and this is in the capital, obviously, in the capital, and the police often, broadly speaking, turn a blind eye, or they'll take a bribe, but there is nightlife going on in Tehran now, and underground drinking, which that's quite intriguing, isn't it? But that's only Tehran. That's the capital, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I suspect you've heard similar.
Um,
Yeah,
well, not about drinking particularly, but just people trying to live their lives. One of my
yeah, yeah,
Iranian friends made a video just about a family and the surveillance they went under. The father got a new job actually working for the IRGC, and the fear the family had. He ended up dead at the end, but it was a film, but it was the fear, it was the constant surveillance and fear that people live under. It's just horrible. And it is it. I watched a video with and this is 2023, and it was on Russia Today. They had
Oh
gone,
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
very West
So
side.
I don't know if you even get that there, but they had
No,
gone
not
to
now. No,
no,
France and the UK lost it.
yeah, yeah. They had
Yeah,
gone. They do have some
France,
very good
French one
stuff,
was good.
They had gone to Iran. Oksana was the interviewer's name, and she's married to a Muslim. So she had gone to Iran to interview the president's wife and talk about the hijab. And the woman said, well, of course they enforce it. And she described what happened in the 20s with the modernization of Pahlavi and Ataturk. She described that as intimidation by the West to not wear the hijab. She made everything about the West. It was all of their fault. Everything that went on in Iran was all their fault. And she
Yeah,
actually talked about the pig-like grunting of the Brits and the Americans. And it's just, she said that the hijab was a political statement, that it had always been political, and that it was to push back basically against the infidels. But it's not. It's Sharia. That's what it is. That's all that it is. And the other thing I
yeah,
remember about the original revolution was the women in the street, like maybe 100,000 of these women with no hijab screaming like, please, we do not want this. It was
no,
terrible to watch.
yeah. I mean, here in southern England, in my hometown, Bournemouth on the south coast of England, just a couple of days ago, there was a protest in the town centre um, for Iran and the Iranian people and this revolution. And funny enough, a very, very old friend of mine that I've known since I was a toddler, she's got an Iranian fiance here in Bournemouth, um, and they'll probably get married. She's been with him a long time, but he's a British-born Iranian, but very close to his culture, and his parents are definitely. Um, but yeah, there was a protest. I'd say there were about 20 odd people there in the centre of Bournemouth, but still, would have been noticed. And of course, we've had those all over the UK. Um, how optimistic are you, Elaine, and what sort of timescale do you think it's going to be for any real change in Iran? How do you feel? How
Oh,
optimistic do you feel about
I
it?
don't have a glass bowl. I have no idea. I mean, we don't even know how many people there are in Iran anymore. I mean, the slaughter has just been awful.
Yeah, they've got one of the highest
Yeah,
executions in the world.
I've been following it very closely, and the military vehicles, mounted with machine guns,
Yeah,
mowing down citizens. That is not by any standard a legitimate government, not at all. And
and a
what
lot of the hangings are in front of people, aren't they? A lot of the hangings are in front of the local
Yes,
people.
that's right. Yes.
Not all, but a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So and that's a matter of control. Now there was something I wanted to show you there. Okay. Well, what Islam demands, okay, is that you don't have to follow someone if they are not following Allah's law. So it's like if it's a disbelief. But so far as the people who are enforcing this are concerned, they feel that the Iranians themselves, all right, they're disobeying Sharia, they're rebelling, they're not allowed to do that. It's very controlled civilization. And so they feel justified in just mowing them down and just killing them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The doctrine,
Okay.
you can read this doctrine so many terrible ways, but it just it justifies killing people. The same way at Bondi Beach. We saw what happened there, and they felt perfectly justified to stand up there armed and do target shooting at these people
Yeah,
because they're they're disobedient, or they're Jews or whatever, this isn't allowed in Islam. So just yeah.
And in their heads, this doesn't make it right. This doesn't make it acceptable. But in their heads, they are right. What they're doing is the right thing in their minds. They believe that the people that they're hurting or targeting are bad people who
Well,
are not falling into line,
yeah.
and not being a good person. Hard for us to understand, but that is how it is, isn't it, Elaine?
Well, it is like this is what the Quran supports. So, five Quran 533. That's making war. Anything that is making war on Allah, okay, is that includes blocking roads, which, by the way, is happening here all the time. But they call that fitna, is that there is a disturbance, an unrest, and this is totally unacceptable. So Quran 839 says specifically, fight them until there is no more fitna, discord, and religion belongs wholly to Allah. So,
Yeah,
that's what we don't want. We do not want, I certainly do not want to live under Sharia. And the way
no,
our governments are
no,
ignoring the advance of it, that is exactly what's going to
yeah,
happen if things don't turn
yeah,
around very, very soon. Very soon. The
yeah,
window is closing because,
yeah.
once it has political control, this is what you're going to end up with. And that is
I,
why what is happening
it
in Iran is so important to all of us.
it
Yeah.
is unbelievable, isn't it?
It is.
That
It is.
it is
How can they not? Yeah.
very hard to understand, and very hard to communicate to people that Western governments are tolerating or turning a blind eye to, or semi accepting this. It is absolutely, it is unfathomable,
Well,
and,
the
and
quote,
more than shocking.
the
Yeah,
the quote on the cover, like, I've my book has been translated into French.
yeah,
But because
okay,
French is bigger, all right, we split it into
yeah,
3 volumes, and that also will get it out a little bit quicker. And each volume
yeah,
has the same reviews on the back. Like, I had a couple of very good reviews, but I've taken a quote from each of the 3 volumes and put it on the back cover. And
yeah,
from the back cover, it says that the failure in the West is to recognize the failure of governments in the West is their failure to recognize war unless it is declared by a nation state. That's all they understand is a nation state. They do not understand that Islam itself is uh, superior to a nation state in Islam. All right, it does not recognize borders, and it's
yeah,
very much here. And they keep kowtowing to it. And what it is an adversarial system of governance, and they don't treat it as such, and they need to.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
that's basically how my book ends, is telling them
I
how
mean,
they can do that, putting it right in their hands, how it's simply a matter of a threshold,
yeah.
I
In
mean,
Canada, you've got a lot of French speakers, and in
yeah.
Canada, French is the second language. So let's really push the French version of your book, which you've painstakingly managed to make happen. And I've got so much admiration for you there. That's really going to help. So it's un bilan civilisationnel, comprendre la menace, reprendre l'avenir. Volume 3. I think it's a great title in English and French. It's a great title. I love it because it's positive. It's positive. It's not sensationalistic. It's not. It's
it
not
it
being
it
nasty about Muslims. It's not having a go at Muslims necessarily. It's
oh,
having a
not at
go.
all.
It's
And it
having a
is
go at
very easy to
the
read.
system.
Like, you did
Yeah,
mention that it's academic, and only insofar as it contains a lot of information, but
yeah,
presented in a very, very readable way. Because
yeah.
my goal is to communicate, and you don't communicate when you're using $10 words if a $2 word will do.
No,
So I make it
it's
as
having a
easy to read
go.
as possible. Yeah.
It's having a go at the system, the teachings, the Quran, and what's being planned. It's not having a go at individual people who happen to be, born into or find themselves within
Yeah.
Islam.
And how it's being presented here, because people are going to listen to this interview and say, well, I know a really nice Muslim. I'm not
Yeah,
talking about Muslims.
no,
Let's get that really clear. Okay.
yeah,
I'm talking about doctrine, and the doctrine can basically say anything that you want it to, because Muhammad had two careers. He started out as a preacher of sorts, okay, called himself a prophet, but that was the first 13 years. But then he turned into a jihadi, and there is simply no two ways about that. He fought with all his neighbors, traveling hundreds of
yeah,
miles to do that,
yeah,
putting them under his control, going back,
yeah,
conquering Mecca, breaking all of the idols in the Kaaba, because nothing would be tolerated against Islam. And that is how Islam always ends up. It follows the same trajectory. It begins with the mosque and
yeah,
everything's fine and nice. But once you have that core that takes control, because this is what the doctrine rewards. Jihad is the highest deed. The imams, these are the ones that are powerful. So that's upside down
yeah,
to how the West looks at what should be honored. This is not what we would do
yeah.
ourselves. So yeah, it's completely different, and they need to really wake
Well,
up and understand what it is.
yeah, and people just don't realize this
And
about
a lot of
Islam.
Muslims don't either.
No,
There are many,
no,
many Muslims who honestly don't know their own doctrine very well. And they
no,
certainly don't look at it from the perspective of the non-Muslim. So they may have been raised in a very liberal
mm,
household in the West, and they think it'll continue like that. Well, it won't. It will. It certainly didn't for Iran, and it didn't for Turkey. And a lot of
yeah,
people don't know that in 1979, well, I'm getting off topic now, there was another coup, and that
yeah,
was in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia was also becoming more secular, well, more liberal, let's say. Okay, they had televisions and things, for heaven's sakes. And there was a group that took over the Kaaba. And how they did it was they brought in armaments, which are illegal in the Kaaba. They brought them in a funeral procession, and they took over the Kaaba. Then the people were very superstitious and absolutely terrified to fight them, because you're not allowed in Islam to have armaments inside the Kaaba. And in
mm,
order to get the ulama, which is the group of Islamic scholars, to support them, the king had to kind of make a deal with them. And what they said is, we actually kind of agree with these people who have taken over the Kaaba, because they want a reset. They want a factory reset, which is what Islam also requires. It says that every 100 years, someone will be risen up to take Islam back to its basics. So that's what they wanted to happen. They wanted to get back to the core Islamic teachings, and they wanted the televisions gone, any influence with the West. So the deal was that in order to get a fatwa, they had to promise to finance education in the West, to Islamize the West. That's when the money started flowing into the universities. And it was a direct result of a coup at the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia in 1979. And since then, okay, we've had 45 years of Islamic indoctrination in our universities, and we see them in the
mm,
streets. And they're painting a picture of Islam that is not realistic. It ends up with executions like we see in Iran and in Saudi Arabia as well, public executions, Haddad punishments.
yeah. Slightly digressing, but much, 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 much smaller of a problem. Much, very, very small compared to what we're talking about. But even within Christianity, you get the fundamentalist, ultra-conservative Christians, don't you? Who've got some, what I would say, some pretty extreme beliefs, but they are in a very small minority, and they're certainly not trying to impose that and put it out into society generally. They generally live in their cliques, don't they? Whereas Islam, this is mainstream, and it's trying to infiltrate into the mainstream.
Well,
It's
no
not
other
like
no other belief
yeah,
system has
no,
Sharia. That's all there
no. I
is
mean,
to it. No other
it's
belief
like, for
system has
example, if
anything
you
like
mention
Sharia. No.
if
Yeah.
you look at Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, I know a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, and And yeah, they've got some very, very far-fetched black and white scary views. I mean, they're often very down-to-earth, ordinary people, many of them. They are, what different walks of life, but they have got some pretty sort of semi-dangerous views. But they basically, I hate that word. Essentially, they keep in their world, in their cliques, don't they? They're not trying to push it out into in a threatening way into right through society, are they? Let's face it.
Well, they don't reward jihadis with paradise either.
No, no. Anyway, Alan, I suppose we've run out of time.
Yeah, we have.
Probably gone a bit over, but yeah, let's push your French version of your book again. Civilisation, un bilan civilisationnel, comprendre la menace, reprendre l'avenir. Oh, you got yeah. Oh yeah,
Oh, and
and that's
this is the English. The French is so
yeah.
hot off the press. I don't even have a copy of it myself yet.
No,
But
I
this is
can't
the
actually.
English. It ends
I
with
wanted to show that on
legislation.
screen. I'm glad you've got that there because I wanted to show it on screen, but you'll be pleased to know I handed it on
Yes.
after I finished it. I handed it on to some people I was living with in the Midlands, and he said, "Oh yeah, not only am I interested in that, but he said my mum will be very interested as well. So he's going to read it, and then he's going to hand it over to his mum. So
Oh, very
that's
good.
yeah.
And
So I
you
haven't
know
got it
something,
anymore.
it makes a great present. So I
Yeah,
do know it is in the hands of a few politicians. I won't say who
yeah,
or where,
yeah,
but in diverse, very diverse locations. And
yeah,
if you have a favorite politician, pick one up for them because the legislation is at the end. There is a way that this can be done peacefully. It simply means
yeah,
establishing a threshold. We don't even need to speak about Islam. What we need to talk about are human rights, basic
yeah.
human rights.
Human rights. Yeah,
That's right. That's what needs to be
human
protected.
rights.
It's very simple.
Yeah. Respecting religious freedoms, but balancing that and making sure that doesn't overlap with or run counter to basic human rights. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
our constitutions protect rights that Islam removes. So we
yeah.
need to defend our constitutions.
Yeah.
No,
So people can find you on Amazon.
equality before the law, no slavery, no
Yeah.
jihad, just the basics.
Yeah. Mm.
All right.
So people can find you on Amazon. Elaine Ellinger, that's Ellinger,
Yeah.
Ellinger, Elaine Ellinger, and obviously you're very prominent on Substack, which is getting really big now,
Oh,
isn't it?
yeah. Doing very well on Substack. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really good place
Not
to
so
get.
hot on X. All right. Yeah. I think you need
No,
celebrity status to be a winner on X, but yeah, no,
yeah,
Substack is very good. I'm on LinkedIn. I have YouTube,
yeah,
and a podcast. Yes, I read my entire book into a podcast, and I'm releasing it one a week on
yeah,
YouTube. And the reason is I want people to be able to read this book in any language. And the whole reason the French book was written to start with was because a woman in Belgium contacted me and she said, we need this information here so badly. And when I went searching for the doctrine in French, well, there's a dearth of it. It's like you can only find a very few hadith. They're Baudelairized. You can't find the Syria. You can't find, and let alone something like Romanian or these other languages. A lot of people are migrating to Europe now, but they're not even bothering to learn the language, and you certainly can't. So, Islam thrives in the dark. It thrives on ignorance. You need to know very much what it says. And so I agreed to the French translation, but then I thought, no, there's a lot of other people who need to know. But because they have to sit and watch it and read the the subtitles, I felt that one a week is probably the best way to do this. So it is on YouTube. There's a podcast where I read the whole book.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Elaine Ellinger, and I'll speak to you in a month's time.
All right.
And who knows where we'll be in a month's time.
There's lots to talk about. Okay. Thank
A
you.
month can be a long time, can't it? A lot can happen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.